Before we dive into this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated? Have you ever been told you couldn't achieve something because of where you come from, how you look, or what you represent? So this story is for you. Because today we're talking about two young men who didn't just defy the odds, they rewrote the rules. And when a racist talk show host tried to tear them down, they didn't just clap back, they made history. So, grab a seat, turn up the volume, and get ready to witness a moment that will leave you inspired, fired up, and ready to conquer your own challenges. Let's go. The studio lights were blinding, and the air felt heavy with tension. The audience sat in silence, their eyes darting between the twins seated on the sleek, modern couch and the talk show host standing at his podium, a smirk plastered across his face. The host, a middle-aged man named Greg Thornton, was known for his sharp tongue and controversial takes. But today he had crossed a line. So, let me get this straight, Greg began, his tone dripping with condescension. You two, 22 years old? Think you can just waltz into the tech industry and compete with the big dogs? With your little app? He paused, chuckling as if the idea itself was absurd. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats, but Greg didn't seem to notice or care. The twins, Malik and Jamal Carter, exchanged a quick glance. Malik, the more outspoken of the two, leaned forward, his calm demeanor belying the fire in his eyes. It's not just an app, Mr. Thornton, he said, his voice steady. It's a platform designed to connect underserved communities with resources they've been systematically denied. And yes, we do believe we can compete because we're not just building a business. We're building a movement. Greg raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. A movement? That's cute. But let's be real here. You're two kids from the south side of Chicago. What do you know about running a tech company? What do you know about anything? The audience gasped. Malik's jaw tightened, and Jamal, who had been quietly observing, placed a hand on his brother's arm. But before Malik could respond, Greg continued, his voice rising. I mean, come on. You're sitting here in your fancy suits, acting like you've made it. But let's not forget where you came from. The crime, the poverty. Let's not pretend you're anything more than a feel-good story for the media to exploit. The room fell silent. Malik and Jamal sat frozen, their faces unreadable. Greg leaned back, clearly pleased with himself. But then Malik stood up. Slowly, deliberately, he adjusted his suit jacket and looked Greg straight in the eye. You're right about one thing, Mr. Thornton, he said, his voice low but firm. We are from the South Side. And we're proud of it. But what you don't understand is that where we come from doesn't define our limits. It fuels our drive. And as for what we know. He paused, a small smile playing on his lips. Let's just say we know enough to turn this moment into something you'll never forget. The audience erupted into applause, but Greg's face turned red with anger. Oh, this ought to be good, he sneered. Please enlighten us. What are you going to do? Cry racism? Play the victim? Malik's smile didn't waver. No, Mr. Thornton. We're going to show you exactly why you underestimated us. And by the time we're done, you'll wish you'd taken us seriously. The camera cut to a close-up of Greg's stunned face as the screen faded to black. The words "to be continued" appeared on the screen, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats. Now let's rewind to the beginning. Malik and Jamal Carter were born and raised in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago, a community often overshadowed by its struggles with violence and poverty. But from a young age, the twins were determined to defy the odds. Their mother, a single parent who worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, instilled in them the values of hard work, resilience, and education. You can't control where you start, she would tell them, but you can control where you finish. The twins were inseparable, each complementing the other's strengths. Malik was the dreamer, always coming up with bold ideas and ambitious plans. Jamal, on the other hand, was the strategist, meticulously working out the details and ensuring their ideas were grounded in reality. Together they were unstoppable. In high school they started their first business, a small tutoring service for younger students in their neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it gave them a taste of entrepreneurship and planted the seed for what would eventually become their tech company, ConnectU. ConnectU was born out of a simple yet powerful idea: to create a platform that would bridge the gap between underserved communities and the resources they needed to thrive. From job opportunities and educational programs to mental health services and financial literacy tools, ConnectU aimed to empower people who had been overlooked by traditional systems. But building a tech company from scratch was no easy feat, especially for 2 young black men with no connections or capital. They faced countless rejections from investors who doubted their vision and their ability to execute it. You're too young, they were told. You don't have the experience. And sometimes the criticism was less subtle. This isn't the kind of thing people from your background succeed in, one investor had said during a pitch meeting. But Malik and Jamal refused to be discouraged. They poured every ounce of their energy into Connect You, working late nights and early mornings to bring their vision to life. And slowly but surely their hard work began to pay off. They secured their first round of funding, built a small but dedicated team, and launched the beta version of their platform. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and soon, Connect You was gaining traction. Which is how they found themselves on Greg Thornton's talk show. It was supposed to be a major milestone, a chance to share their story with a national audience and inspire others. But from the moment they walked onto the set, they could sense that Greg wasn't interested in giving them a fair shot. His questions were loaded, his tone patronizing, and his comments increasingly disrespectful. And then it happened. The moment that would change everything. Greg's blatant racism and condescension were caught on camera for the world to see. But Malik and Jamal didn't back down. Instead, they stood their ground, delivering a clapback that would soon go viral. As the screen faded to black, viewers were left wondering, what would happen next? How would Malik and Jamal respond to Greg's attacks? And what would this mean for Connect You and for the twins themselves? The studio was in chaos. Malik's words hung in the air like a thunderclap, and the audience was on their feet, some cheering, others murmuring in shock. Greg Thornton, the host, stood frozen at his podium, his face a mix of anger and disbelief. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected them. Malik remained standing, his gaze locked on Greg, while Jamal rose slowly beside him, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the storm brewing in the room. The cameras were rolling, capturing every second of the unfolding drama. This wasn't just a talk show moment anymore. It was a cultural flashpoint. Greg finally found his voice. "Well, isn't this something?" he said, forcing a laugh that sounded more nervous than amused. "You two really think you're something special, don't you? Let's see how far that attitude gets you when the cameras are off." Malik didn't flinch. "The cameras aren't the problem, Mr. Thornton. The problem is you. You think because you have a platform, you can belittle anyone who doesn't fit your idea of success. But guess what? Your platform doesn't define us. And it sure doesn't intimidate us." The audience erupted again, this time louder. Greg's face turned beet red and he opened his mouth to respond, but Jamal cut him off. "You asked us what we know," Jamal said, his voice calm but firm. "Let us show you." With that, the twins turned and walked off the stage, leaving Greg speechless and the audience in an uproar. The cameras followed them as they exited, capturing the stunned expressions of the crew and the electric energy in the room. The segment ended abruptly, cutting to a commercial break, but the damage, or rather, the revolution had already begun. Rewind to 2 weeks earlier. Malik and Jamal were in their small office, a converted garage in Englewood that served as the headquarters for Connect You. The walls were covered in white boards filled with diagrams, timelines, and motivational quotes. A single window let in the faint glow of a street light, casting long shadows across the room. It was late, but the twins were used to working into the early hours of the morning. "This is it," Malik said, pacing back and forth. "This is our chance to show the world what we're made of. Greg Thornton's show is one of the biggest platforms out there. If we nail this, it could change everything." Jamal leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. "Or it could backfire. You know how Greg is. He loves tearing people down, especially people like us. We need to be ready for anything." Malik stopped pacing and looked at his brother. "We've been ready for this our whole lives. We've faced worse than Greg Thornton. Remember when Mr. Jenkins told us we'd never amount to anything because of where we came from? Or when that investor laughed us out of the room? We didn't let that stop us. We're not going to let Greg stop us either." Jamal nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "You're right. But we still need a plan. We can't just walk in there and wing it. Greg's going to come at us hard. We need to be prepared." For the next 2 weeks, the twins worked tirelessly, preparing for their appearance on Greg's show. They rehearsed their talking points, anticipated every possible question, and even role-played worst-case scenarios. But no amount of preparation could have fully prepared them for what actually happened. The day of the show arrived. Malik and Jamal walked into the studio, their confidence radiating. They were dressed in sharp, tailored suits, a deliberate choice to challenge the stereotypes Greg might try to impose on them. As they were led to the green room, they could feel the weight of the moment. This was their chance to share their story with millions of people. But it was also a potential trap. Backstage, they overheard Greg talking to one of his producers. "These kids think they're the next big thing," Greg said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let's see how they handle a little pressure. This is going to be fun." Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. They had expected Greg to be difficult, but this confirmed their suspicions. He wasn't interested in giving them a fair shot. He was setting them up to fail. But they weren't afraid. If anything, Greg's attitude only fueled their determination. As they walked onto the stage and took their seats, they felt a strange sense of calm. They had worked too hard and come too far to let anyone, especially someone like Greg, derail their dreams. The interview started off smoothly enough. Greg asked them about their background, their business, and their vision for ConnectU. But it didn't take long for his tone to shift. His questions became more pointed, his comments more condescending. And then he crossed the line. Now back to the present. As Malik and Jamal left the stage, they could hear Greg shouting after them, his voice barely audible over the noise of the audience. They didn't look back. They didn't need to. They had said what they needed to say and they had done it on their own terms. But as they stepped into the hallway, they were met with a surprise. A group of crew members, camera operators, sound technicians, and production assistants were waiting for them. One by one they began to clap, then cheer, then chant their names. Malik, Jamal, Malik, Jamal. The twins were stunned. They hadn't expected this. They hadn't expected any of this. But as they looked around at the faces of the people who had witnessed Greg's behavior firsthand, they realized something. They weren't alone. They had allies. And those allies were ready to fight alongside them. But before they could process what was happening, a producer rushed up to them, her face pale. "You need to see this," she said, holding out her phone. On the screen was a live feed of social media. The hashtag Carter Clapback was already trending, and the clip of their confrontation with Greg was going viral. Thousands of people were commenting, sharing, and expressing their support for the twins. But there was also backlash, angry comments from Greg's fans, dismissive remarks from critics, and even threats. Malik handed the phone back to the producer, his expression unreadable. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Not even close." And with that, the twins walked out of the studio, leaving behind a storm that was only just beginning. The morning after the talk show, Malik and Jamal woke up to a world that had changed overnight. Their phones were flooded with notifications, emails, text, social media mentions, and voicemails. The clip of their confrontation with Greg Thornton had spread like wildfire, and the internet was ablaze with reactions. Malik scrolled through his Twitter feed, his eyes widening as he read the comments. "Jamal, you need to see this," he said, handing his phone to his brother. Jamal took the phone and began reading aloud. "Malik and Jamal just schooled Greg Thornton on national TV. Legendary. This is what happens when you underestimate black excellence. The Carter twins are the heroes we didn't know we needed." He paused, scrolling further. "But there's also this. Greg was just asking tough questions. These kids are too sensitive. And this one, they're just playing the race card to get attention." Malik sighed, running a hand over his face. "I knew there'd be backlash, but this is intense." Jamal nodded, his expression serious. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. But we can't let the negativity distract us. We have to stay focused." Before they could discuss their next steps, Malik's phone rang. It was their publicist, Lisa. "You boys are everywhere," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. "The clip has over 10 million views already and it's still climbing. But we need to figure out how to handle this. The media is going to be all over you. What do you suggest?" Malik asked. "First, we need to put out a statement. Something that addresses what happened without escalating things further. Second, we need to capitalize on this momentum. You've got the world's attention, let's use it to push ConnectU forward." The twins agreed, and within hours they released a carefully crafted statement. "Last night, we had the opportunity to share our story on a national platform. While we were prepared to discuss our journey and the mission behind ConnectU, we were met with disrespect and condescension. We believe in standing up for ourselves and for the communities we represent. This isn't just about us, it's about every young person who's been told they're not enough. We won't be silenced and we won't back down. Thank you to everyone who has shown us support. This is just the beginning." The statement was met with overwhelming support, but it also reignited the debate. News outlets picked up the story with headlines like "Twin entrepreneurs clap back at racist talk show host" and "Greg Thornton under fire after heated exchange with young founders." Meanwhile, Greg's team released their own statement, defending his comments and accusing the twins of playing the victim. The controversy only grew, and soon Malik and Jamal found themselves at the center of a media storm. Interview requests poured in, and Lisa worked tirelessly to manage their schedule. But amidst the chaos, the twins remained focused on their mission. A few days later they received an unexpected call. It was from a prominent venture capitalist named Marcus Reynolds, someone they had pitched to months earlier but had been rejected by. I saw what happened on Greg's show, Marcus said, and I have to say I was impressed. You handled yourselves with grace and strength. I'd like to meet with you to discuss Connect You again. The twins were cautiously optimistic. They knew better than to get their hopes up, but this was an opportunity they couldn't afford to pass up. They agreed to meet Marcus at his office in downtown Chicago. The meeting started off well. Marcus was friendly and engaging, and he seemed genuinely interested in their vision. But as the conversation progressed, Malik and Jamal began to sense that something was off. You know, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, what happened on Greg's show was unfortunate, but it's also given you a unique advantage. People love an underdog story. If we play our cards right, we can turn this into a major win for Connect You. Malik frowned. What do you mean by play our cards right? Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I mean, we lean into the narrative. We position you as the young, scrappy entrepreneurs who took on the establishment and won. It's a powerful story and it'll attract a lot of attention and investors. Jamal exchanged a glance with Malik. With all due respect, Mr. Reynolds, we're not interested in being its story. We're building a company that's going to make a real difference. If that's not what you're looking for, then maybe this isn't the right fit. Marcus's smile faded, and for a moment the room was silent. Then he leaned forward, his tone sharp. Let me be clear. You're in a unique position right now, but that won't last forever. If you want to succeed in this industry, you need to be strategic. And sometimes that means playing the game. Malik stood up, his expression firm. We're not interested in playing games. We're here to build something meaningful. If that's not something you can support, then we'll find someone who can. With that, the twins walked out of the office, leaving Marcus staring after them in stunned silence. As they stepped onto the bustling streets of downtown Chicago, Malik and Jamal felt a mix of frustration and determination. They had faced rejection before, but this was different. This wasn't just about money or resources, it was about their integrity. We're not going to compromise who we are, Jamal said, his voice steady. No matter what. Malik nodded. Agreed. But we need to figure out our next move. We can't let this setback slow us down. As if on cue, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a text from Lisa. You're not going to believe this. Check your email. Malik opened his email and saw a message from a name he recognized immediately. Serena Blake, the CEO of one of the most successful tech companies in the country. The subject line read, "Let's talk." Malik showed the email to Jamal, who read it aloud. I saw what happened on Greg's show, and I was blown away by your courage and vision. I'd love to meet with you to discuss how I can support Connect You. Let me know when you're available. The twins looked at each other, their eyes wide with disbelief. This was the break they had been waiting for. But as they celebrated, a thought lingered in the back of their minds. What would this meeting bring? And were they ready for what came next? The email from Serena Blake felt like a lifeline. For Malik and Jamal, it was a sign that their hard work and integrity were finally being recognized by someone who truly understood their vision. But as they prepared for the meeting, they couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a new set of challenges. The meeting was scheduled for the following week at Serena's office in Silicon Valley. The twins spent days preparing, reviewing their pitch, and discussing their goals. They knew this was a make-or-break moment, and they were determined to make the most of it. When the day arrived, they flew to California, their nerves tingling with anticipation. Serena's office was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of the city. As they were led into the conference room, they were greeted by Serena herself, a tall, confident woman with a warm smile and an air of authority. Malik, Jamal, it's great to finally meet you, she said, shaking their hands. I've been following your journey and I have to say I'm impressed. What you've accomplished so far is no small feat. Thank you, Malik said, returning her smile. We're excited to be here. The meeting began with casual conversation, but it quickly shifted to business. Serena listened intently as the twins outlined their vision for Connect You, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights from her own experience. It was clear that she wasn't just interested in their business, she was invested in their mission. Your platform has the potential to make a real impact, she said. But scaling a company like this is no easy task. You'll need resources, connections, and a solid strategy. That's where I come in. Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. This was the moment they had been waiting for. We're open to any support you can offer, Jamal said. But we want to make sure our values align. We're not just building a company, we're building a movement. Serena nodded, her expression serious. I understand. And that's exactly why I wanted to meet with you. I believe in what you're doing and I want to help you succeed. But I also need to be honest with you. The road ahead won't be easy. There will be obstacles, setbacks, and people who will try to tear you down. Are you ready for that? The twins didn't hesitate. We've faced challenges before, Malik said, and we're not afraid to face them again. As long as we stay true to our mission, we can handle whatever comes our way. Serena smiled, clearly impressed by their resolve. Good. Because I'm in. Let's make this happen. The rest of the meeting was a whirlwind of ideas and plans. Serena offered to invest in ConnectU, provide mentorship, and introduce the twins to her network of industry leaders. It was more than they had ever hoped for, and by the time they left her office, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. But as they celebrated their victory, a storm was brewing. Unbeknownst to them, Greg Thornton had been closely watching the fallout from their appearance on his show. The backlash against him had been fierce, with many viewers calling for his resignation. But instead of backing down, Greg had doubled down, using his platform to attack the twins and discredit their achievements. In a segment on his show, Greg addressed the controversy head-on. Let's be clear, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. What happened on this show wasn't about race or discrimination. It was about two young men who couldn't handle a little criticism. And now they're playing the victim to gain sympathy and attention. Well, I'm not buying it. The segment went viral, reigniting the debate and drawing even more attention to the twins. But this time the backlash was more intense. Greg's supporters rallied behind him, flooding social media with hateful comments and threats directed at Malik and Jamal. The twins tried to stay focused, but the constant barrage of negativity was taking its toll. We can't let this distract us, Jamal said one evening as they reviewed their plans for ConnectU. We have to keep moving forward. Malik nodded, but his expression was troubled. I know. But it's hard to ignore all this noise. It feels like no matter what we do, someone's always trying to tear us down. Before Jamal could respond, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a text from Lisa. You need to see this. No. Malik opened the link she had sent and his heart sank. It was a video of Greg Thornton live on his show, holding up a document. This, Greg said, his voice triumphant, is proof that Malik and Jamal Carter are frauds. According to this report, their company, ConnectU, is under investigation for financial misconduct. Seems like these so-called entrepreneurs aren't as clean as they'd like us to believe. The twins stared at the screen in disbelief. What is he talking about? Jamal asked, his voice shaking. There's no investigation. This is a lie. But the damage was done. The video was already spreading and the comments were brutal. I knew they were too good to be true, one person wrote. Another case of fake success, another added. Malik and Jamal felt like the ground had been ripped out from under them. They had worked so hard to build their reputation and now it was being destroyed in an instant. As they tried to process what was happening, Serena called. I just saw the video, she said, her tone urgent. We need to address this immediately. If we don't, it could ruin everything we've worked for. What do we do? Malik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We fight back, Serena said firmly. We release a statement denying the allegations and demand a retraction. And we take legal action if necessary. But most importantly, we stay strong. This is just another test and we're going to pass it. The twins took a deep breath, trying to steady their nerves. They knew Serena was right. They couldn't let Greg win. They had come too far to give up now. But as they began drafting their response, a new thought crept into their minds. What if this was just the beginning? What if Greg had more tricks up his sleeve? And how far were they willing to go to protect their dreams? The next 24 hours were a blur. Malik and Jamal worked tirelessly with Serena and their legal team to craft a response to Greg Thornton's allegations. They released a statement denying any wrongdoing and demanding a retraction, but the damage had already been done. The video had gone viral and the narrative was spiraling out of control. Social media was a battlefield. Supporters of the twins fought back against Greg's claims, but his loyal fanbase was relentless. Hashtags like #ExposeTheCarters and #ConnectUScam began trending, and the twins found themselves at the center of a media firestorm. As they sat in their office late that night, Malik slammed his laptop shut in frustration. This is insane. How can people just believe whatever they see online without questioning it? Jamal leaned back in his chair, his face pale but determined. Because it's easier to believe the worst about people, especially when they don't fit the mold. But we can't let this break us. We have to fight back. Serena agreed. The truth is on your side. We just need to make sure it's heard. Let's focus on the facts and expose Greg for what he's doing. The next morning they held a press conference. Malik and Jamal stood at the podium, flanked by Serena and their legal team. The room was packed with reporters, their cameras flashing as the twins began to speak. Good morning, Malik said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We're here to address the false allegations made against us and our company, Connect You. Let us be clear, there is no investigation into our finances or operations. These claims are baseless and defamatory, and we have the documentation to prove it." Jamal stepped forward, holding up a folder. "This contains all the evidence needed to refute these allegations. We've also filed a formal complaint against Greg Thornton and his show for spreading false information. We will not stand by while our reputation is destroyed by lies." The room erupted with questions, but Malik and Jamal remained calm, answering each one with precision and confidence. By the end of the press conference, it was clear that the tide was beginning to turn. Major news outlets picked up the story, and the narrative shifted from suspicion to support. But Greg wasn't done. Later that day he released another video, this time doubling down on his claims. "Oh, they're denying it, are they?" he said, his tone mocking. "Of course they are. But let's not forget who we're dealing with here. These are two kids from the South Side who somehow managed to build a tech empire overnight. Does that really sound believable to anyone?" The video reignited the debate, and once again the twins found themselves under attack. But this time they weren't alone. Serena had mobilized her network, and within hours, a wave of support began to pour in. Tech leaders, entrepreneurs, and even celebrities took to social media to defend Malik and Jamal. "I've worked with the Carter twins and they're the real deal," one CEO tweeted. "This is a blatant attempt to discredit two young black men who are changing the game. Shame on Greg Thornton." The hashtag I stand with the Carters began trending, and the twins were flooded with messages of encouragement. But amidst the support, there was still one question lingering in the back of their minds. Who was behind this? Was Greg acting alone, or was there something bigger at play? As they tried to piece together the puzzle, Malik received a call from an unknown number. He hesitated before answering, but something told him he needed to take it. "Malik Carter?" a voice on the other end said. It was deep and gravelly, with an edge that sent a chill down Malik's spine. "Yes, this is Malik." "Who is this?" The man chuckled, a low, menacing sound. "Let's just say I'm someone who knows the truth about Greg Thornton. And if you're smart, you'll listen to what I have to say." Malik's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "What do you want?" "I want to help you," the man said. "Greg's not working alone. He's being paid to take you down. And if you want to stop him, you're going to need my help." Malik's mind raced. Was this a trap? Or was it the break they had been waiting for? "How do I know I can trust you?" "You don't," the man said simply. "But if you want to save your company and your reputation, you don't have a choice. Meet me tonight at 9 p.m. at the old warehouse on 5th and Main. Come alone." Before Malik could respond, the line went dead. He stared at his phone, his heart pounding. He knew he should tell Jamal and Serena, but something told him to keep this to himself for now. That night, Malik arrived at the warehouse, his nerves on edge. The building was dark and abandoned, with broken windows and graffiti covering the walls. He stepped inside, the sound of his footsteps echoing in the empty space. Over here, a voice called out. Malik turned to see a figure emerge from the shadows. It was a man in his late 40s with a rugged face and piercing eyes. He looked like someone who had seen too much and done even more. "Who are you?" Malik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Name's Victor. And like I said, I'm here to help. But first, you need to understand what you're up against." He handed Malik a folder. Inside were documents, emails, bank statements, and photos that painted a chilling picture. Greg Thornton wasn't just a racist talk show host. He was part of a larger scheme to discredit and destroy black entrepreneurs who threatened the status quo. Malik's hands trembled as he flipped through the documents. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I've seen what happens when people like you try to make a difference," Victor said. "They get crushed. But you've got something they don't. You've got fire. And if you play your cards right, you might just win this fight." Malik looked up, his eyes narrowing. "What's in it for you?" Victor shrugged. "Let's just say I have my own reasons for wanting to take these people down. But that's not important right now. What's important is what you do next." Malik took a deep breath, his mind racing. He knew this was a dangerous game, but he also knew he couldn't back down. "What do I need to do?" Victor leaned in, his voice low and intense. "You need to expose them. And to do that, you're going to need proof. Real proof. The kind that can't be ignored." As Malik left the warehouse, he felt a mix of fear and determination. He knew this was just the beginning of a much bigger battle. But for the first time in days, he felt like they had a fighting chance. When he returned to the office, Jamal was waiting for him. "Where have you been?" Jamal asked, his voice tinged with worry. Malik hesitated, then handed him the folder. We've got work to do. Jamal flipped through the documents Victor had given Malik, his eyes widening with each page. This is insane, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Greg's not just some loudmouth with a platform. He's part of a whole network trying to take us down. Malik nodded, his expression grim. And if we don't act fast, they're going to win. We need to expose this, but we have to be smart about it. One wrong move and they'll bury us. The twins spent the rest of the night poring over the documents, piecing together the puzzle. The evidence pointed to a shadowy group of investors and industry insiders who had been systematically targeting black entrepreneurs for years. Their goal? To maintain control over the tech industry and prevent anyone from disrupting the status quo. This is bigger than us, Jamal said, his voice heavy with realization. If we take this down, it's not just about saving ConnectU. It's about protecting everyone who comes after us. Malik agreed. But we can't do this alone. We need allies. People who are willing to stand with us and fight. The first person they called was Serena. She listened intently as they explained what they had discovered, her expression growing darker with each word. This is worse than I thought, she said finally. But you're right. We can't let this go unchecked. I'll reach out to my contacts and see who's willing to help. Over the next few days, a coalition began to form. Tech leaders, activists, and even a few journalists joined forces with Malik and Jamal, united by a common goal: to expose the truth and hold those responsible accountable. But as the coalition grew, so did the risks. The twins began to notice strange things, cars following them, unfamiliar faces lingering outside their office, even a break-in attempt at their home. It was clear that their enemies were watching, and they weren't going down without a fight. One evening, as the twins were finalizing their plan, they received a call from Victor. You've made a lot of noise, he said, his tone urgent. They know you're onto them and they're getting nervous. You need to move fast. We're doing everything we can, Malik replied. But we need more time. You don't have time, Victor snapped. They're planning something big. Something that could destroy everything you've built. If you want to stop them, you need to act now. Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. They knew Victor was right, but they also knew the stakes. If they moved too soon, they risked tipping their hand. If they waited too long, they might lose their chance altogether. We'll figure it out, Jamal said finally. But we need your help. You know these people. You know how they operate. Tell us what to do. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Victor sighed. Meet me tomorrow night. Same place. And come prepared. This is going to get ugly. The next night, Malik and Jamal returned to the warehouse, their nerves on edge. Victor was waiting for them, his expression grim. Here's the deal, he said, handing them a flash drive. This contains everything you need to take them down. Emails, financial records, even recordings of their meetings. But you need to be careful. If they find out you have this, they'll come after you with everything they've got. Malik took the flash drive, his hands trembling slightly. What's on here? Proof, Victor said simply. Proof that Greg Thornton and his backers have been conspiring to sabotage black entrepreneurs for years. Proof that they've been paying off journalists, manipulating the media, and even bribing officials to keep their scheme under wraps. Jamal's eyes widened. This is huge. If we release this, it could change everything. Victor nodded. But it's not enough to just release it. You need to make sure it gets into the right hands. People who can't be bought or silenced. And you need to do it fast. They're already planning their next move. Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. They knew what they had to do. We'll take care of it, Malik said firmly. But we need your help. You've been in the shadows long enough. It's time to step into the light. Victor hesitated, then nodded. All right. But don't say I didn't warn you. The next morning, the twins held an emergency meeting with their coalition. They laid out the evidence Victor had provided, and the room fell silent as the magnitude of the situation sank in. This is it, Serena said finally. This is our chance to expose them. But we need to be strategic. If we release this too soon, they'll find a way to discredit it. If we wait too long, they'll bury it. We need a plan, Jamal agreed. Something that ensures this gets the attention it deserves. After hours of discussion, they settled on a strategy. They would leak the evidence to a trusted journalist, someone with a reputation for integrity and a track record of taking down powerful figures. They would also coordinate with activists and tech leaders to amplify the story and ensure it couldn't be ignored. But as they finalized the details, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. What if they see this coming? He asked. What if they have a backup plan? They might, Serena admitted. But we have to take that risk. This is bigger than us. This is about justice. The next day the story broke. The journalist they had chosen published an explosive exposé, detailing the conspiracy and naming names. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with outrage, and the hashtag exposed the system began trending worldwide. Greg Thornton and his backers scrambled to contain the damage, but it was too late. The evidence was too damning and the public's anger was too great. Within hours, Greg's show was cancelled and several high-profile figures were forced to resign. But the victory was bittersweet. As the twins celebrated with their coalition, they received a call from Victor. "You did it," he said, his voice tinged with relief. "But this isn't over. They're not going to just disappear. They'll regroup and they'll come after you. You need to be ready." Malik nodded, his expression serious. "We will be. But we're not alone anymore. We've got an army behind us." Victor chuckled, a rare sound. "You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that. Just don't let your guard down." As the twins hung up, they felt a mix of emotions: relief, pride, but also a lingering sense of unease. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. And as they looked out at the city skyline, they knew that their fight was just beginning. The days following the exposé were a whirlwind of media attention, public support, and cautious optimism. Malik and Jamal found themselves thrust into the spotlight as symbols of resilience and justice. ConnectU's platform saw a surge in users, and investors who had once turned them away were now lining up to offer support. But amidst the chaos, the twins remained vigilant. They knew their enemies weren't defeated, they were just regrouping. One evening, as they wrapped up a long day of meetings, Serena pulled them aside. "You've done something incredible," she said, her voice filled with pride. "But we need to talk about what's next. This isn't over and we can't afford to let our guard down." Malik nodded, his expression serious. "We know. Victor warned us they'd come back. We need to be ready." Serena handed them a folder. "I've been doing some digging of my own. It turns out Greg Thornton was just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole network of people involved in this, and they're not going to let this go without a fight." Jamal flipped through the folder, his eyes narrowing as he read the contents. "This is bigger than we thought. If we're going to take them down for good, we need to hit them where it hurts." "Exactly," Serena said. "And that's what this is for." She pulled out a USB drive and handed it to Malik. "This contains everything we've gathered so far: financial records, emails, even recordings of their meetings. But we need to be smart about how we use it. If we move too soon, they'll find a way to discredit us. If we wait too long, they'll bury us." Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. They knew the stakes, but they also knew they couldn't back down. "We'll figure it out," Malik said firmly. "But we need your help. You've been in this game longer than we have. Tell us what to do." Serena smiled, a glint of determination in her eyes. "All right. Here's the plan." Over the next few days, the twins worked closely with Serena and their coalition to prepare for the next phase of their fight. They reached out to allies in the tech industry, activists, and even a few sympathetic politicians who were willing to help. They also began quietly leaking pieces of the evidence to trusted journalists, building momentum for the final blow. But as they worked, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Strange things kept happening: cars following them, unfamiliar faces lingering outside their office, even a break-in attempt at their home. It was clear that their enemies were getting desperate. One night, as they were finalizing their plan, they received a call from Victor. "You've made a lot of noise," he said, his tone urgent. "They know you're onto them and they're getting nervous. You need to move fast." "We're doing everything we can," Malik replied. "But we need more time." "You don't have time," Victor snapped. "They're planning something big. Something that could destroy everything you've built. If you want to stop them, you need to act now." Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. They knew Victor was right, but they also knew the stakes. If they moved too soon, they risked tipping their hand. If they waited too long, they might lose their chance altogether. "We'll figure it out," Jamal said finally. "But we need your help. You know these people. You know how they operate. Tell us what to do." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Victor sighed. "Meet me tomorrow night. Same place. And come prepared. This is going to get ugly." The next night, Malik and Jamal returned to the warehouse, their nerves on edge. Victor was waiting for them, his expression grim. "Here's the deal," he said, handing them a flash drive. "This contains everything you need to take them down. Emails, financial records, even recordings of their meetings. But you need to be careful. If they find out you have this, they'll come after you with everything they've got." Malik took the flash drive, his hands trembling slightly. "What's on here?" "Proof," Victor said simply. "Proof that Greg Thornton and his backers have been conspiring to sabotage black entrepreneurs for years. Proof that they've been paying off journalists, manipulating the media, and even bribing officials to keep their scheme under wraps." Jamal's eyes widened. "This is huge. If we release this, it could change everything. Victor nodded. But it's not enough to just release it. You need to make sure it gets into the right hands. People who can't be bought or silenced. And you need to do it fast. They're already planning their next move. Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. They knew what they had to do. We'll take care of it, Malik said firmly. But we need your help. You've been in the shadows long enough. It's time to step into the light. Victor hesitated, then nodded. All right. But don't say I didn't warn you. The next morning, the twins held an emergency meeting with their coalition. They laid out the evidence Victor had provided, and the room fell silent as the magnitude of the situation sank in. This is it, Serena said finally. This is our chance to expose them. But we need to be strategic. If we release this too soon, they'll find a way to discredit it. If we wait too long, they'll bury it. We need a plan, Jamal agreed. Something that ensures this gets the attention it deserves. After hours of discussion, they settled on a strategy. They would leak the evidence to a trusted journalist, someone with a reputation for integrity and a track record of taking down powerful figures. They would also coordinate with activists and tech leaders to amplify the story and ensure it couldn't be ignored. But as they finalized the details, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. What if they see this coming? He asked. What if they have a backup plan? They might, Serena admitted. But we have to take that risk. This is bigger than us. This is about justice. The next day the story broke. The journalist they had chosen published an explosive exposé, detailing the conspiracy and naming names. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded with outrage, and the hashtag exposed the system began trending worldwide. Greg Thornton and his backers scrambled to contain the damage, but it was too late. The evidence was too damning and the public's anger was too great. Within hours, Greg's show was cancelled and several high-profile figures were forced to resign. But the victory was bittersweet. As the twins celebrated with their coalition, they received a call from Victor. You did it, he said, his voice tinged with relief. But this isn't over. They're not going to just disappear. They'll regroup and they'll come after you. You need to be ready. Malik nodded, his expression serious. We will be. But we're not alone anymore. We've got an army behind us. Victor chuckled, a rare sound. You've got guts, kid. I'll give you that. Just don't let your guard down. As the twins hung up, they felt a mix of emotions, relief, pride, but also a lingering sense of unease. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. And as they looked out at the city skyline, they knew that their fight was just beginning. The fallout from the exposé was seismic. Greg Thornton's career was in ruins, and several high-profile figures implicated in the conspiracy faced public outrage, legal investigations, and resignations. Malik and Jamal were hailed as heroes, their story inspiring countless others to stand up against injustice. But as the dust settled, the twins knew their fight wasn't over. The system they had exposed was deeply entrenched, and their enemies were far from defeated. One evening, as they sat in their office reviewing the latest updates, Jamal leaned back in his chair and sighed. We did it. But it doesn't feel like it's over, you know? Malik nodded, his expression thoughtful. It's not. This was just the beginning. We've exposed them, but we haven't dismantled the system. And until we do, they'll keep coming back. Serena, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward. You're right. But you've already done the hard part. You've shown people the truth. Now it's about building on that momentum and creating lasting change. The twins knew she was right. They had the evidence, the platform, and the support. But they also knew that real change required more than just exposing corruption, it required rebuilding the system from the ground up. Over the next few weeks, Malik and Jamal threw themselves into their work. They expanded ConnectU's platform, partnering with organizations and communities to provide even more resources and opportunities. They also launched a nonprofit initiative called Rise Together, aimed at supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs and advocating for systemic change in the tech industry. But as they worked, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The strange occurrences, cars following them, unfamiliar faces lingering outside their office hadn't stopped. If anything, they had intensified. It was clear that their enemies were still out there, biding their time. One night, as they were leaving the office, Malik noticed a black SUV parked across the street. The windows were tinted and the engine was running. He nudged Jamal and nodded toward the vehicle. You see that? Jamal's eyes narrowed. Yeah. Let's not take any chances. They quickly got into their car and drove off, but the SUV followed at a distance. Malik's heart raced as he gripped the steering wheel. What do we do? Call Victor, Jamal said, pulling out his phone. If anyone knows how to handle this, it's him. Victor answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd call, he said, his voice calm but urgent. You've got a tail. Don't go home. Don't go to the office. Meet me at the old warehouse. And be careful. When they arrived at the warehouse, Victor was waiting for them, his expression grim. You've made a lot of enemies, he said. And they're not playing around anymore. They're planning something big, and if we don't stop them, it could undo everything you've worked for. Malik and Jamal exchanged a glance. What do we do? Jamal asked. Victor handed them a folder. This is everything I've been able to gather on their next move. They're planning to discredit you by fabricating evidence of financial misconduct. If they succeed, it'll destroy your reputation and everything you've built. Malik's jaw tightened. We can't let that happen. You won't, Victor said. But you need to act fast. I've already reached out to some contacts in law enforcement. They're willing to help, but they need proof. And that's where you come in. The twins spent the next few hours going over the plan with Victor. It was risky, but it was their best shot at stopping their enemies for good. They would set a trap, using the evidence Victor had gathered to lure their enemies into the open. And once they had the proof they needed, they would take it to the authorities. The next day, Malik and Jamal put the plan into action. They leaked a fake story to the media, claiming that they had discovered new evidence of corruption within the tech industry. They knew their enemies would take the bait, and they were right. That night, as they waited in their office, the twins received a call from Victor. They're coming, he said. Get ready. Moments later, the door burst open and a group of men stormed in, their faces masked and their intentions clear. But before they could make a move, the lights flicked on, and the room was flooded with law enforcement officers. The men were quickly apprehended, and the evidence they had brought with them, fabricated documents meant to frame the twins, was seized. The next morning, the story broke. The headlines were everywhere. Twin entrepreneurs foil plot to frame them, expose corruption in tech industry. The public's outrage was palpable, and the pressure on the remaining members of the conspiracy was overwhelming. One by one they were arrested, their power and influence crumbling under the weight of their crimes. As the twins watched the news from their office, they felt a sense of relief they hadn't felt in months. But they also knew that their work was far from finished. We did it, Jamal said, his voice filled with quiet pride. But this is just the beginning. Malik nodded, a determined smile on his face. Yeah. Now it's time to build something better. In the months that followed, Malik and Jamal continued to push for change. They expanded Connect You and Rise Together, using their platform to empower others and advocate for systemic reform. They also worked closely with lawmakers and industry leaders to create policies that would prevent something like this from happening again. But amidst the success, they never forgot the lessons they had learned. They knew that the fight for justice was never truly over, and that they had to remain vigilant. But they also knew that they weren't alone. They had each other, their coalition, and the support of countless others who believed in their mission. As they stood on the stage at a tech conference, addressing a crowd of thousands, Malik looked out at the sea of faces and felt a surge of hope. This is just the beginning, he said, his voice ringing with conviction. Together, we can build a future where everyone has the opportunity to succeed. A future where no one has to fight as hard as we did. A future where justice isn't just a dream, it's a reality. The crowd erupted into applause and Jamal stepped forward, his voice joining Malik's. This is our moment. This is our movement. And we're not stopping until we've changed the world.